And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another weekly review with The Robot, brought to you by the Movie Pope. And here he is, bolts and nuts akimbo, The Robot.
You know, I should do more reviews of animated movies. There's a lot of work that goes into making these, a lot of time and talent into planning every shot, every movement, and timing things just right so it flows naturally. Being an animated character myself, it takes over an hour just to get a 5-minute episode, and even more if I've got a lot to say. This time we're looking at Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron from 2002, which follows a Mustang as he goes from being wild and free to learning what life is like with humanity. It sorta reminds of Beethoven a bit, except it's with a horse and out in the West as it's being civilized. There are a few things that come to mind as I watch this, so let's dive right in. By the way, this episode took an hour and 50 minutes to render and put together, in case anyone was wondering. We follow the journey of Spirit, a stallion who goes from running free to being captured to finding true love and making his way home to reunite with his herd. Along the way, we're treated to Spirit's thoughts about these events throughout his journey, nicely narrated by Matt Damon. It's a nice concept, telling the story from an animal's perspective instead of a human. But what's got me wondering is how will anyone know what this horse's story is? I mean, he's speaking English in his head, but when he speaks it's all nays and stuff. I can imagine if you watched a horse out on a farm, doing its business, you'll impose what you think a horse ought to think with interjections of human concerns, jokes, and wisdoms that seem profound. But most likely a horse isn't thinking whatever it is you think it's thinking. Whoa, that was pretty good right there. But even without the narration, you can still follow along, which is a plus, because the great movies are the ones with a simple story that appeals to everybody at any age. The late 19th century was definitely a period in American history where things were taking off, and sure, a Lakota will view these changes differently from a U.S. cavalryman, but seeing the world from a horse's view is unique. After all, the humans, whatever side they may be, have the agency to influence the outcome, but animals not so much. That isn't Spirit's concern, however, because that is above his pay grade. For him, his concerns are more immediate and personal, and you can't get more relatable than that. Throughout the film, Spirit is being trained, first by the U.S. cavalry, then the Lakota, and finally the Mare Rain. Spirit is just living for himself and just wanting to be his own boss. But as the movie progresses, he comes to learn that there's more life than what he wants, and proves he is capable of caring for others and putting his life on the line when it counts. The big one for me is when Spirit at the fort end getting his long mane shorn off by Warner is, for me, perfectly comedic, since it's reminiscent of those long-haired kids who enter the army and get buzzed before being issued their fatigues, and then they're broken and then built up into the perfect fighting machine. Spirit bucks that trend, no pun intended, refusing to kowtow to the system. He doesn't quite understand why man is so determined to tame him and marvels more at how some of the horses, Rain in particular, have such a strong attachment to humans when they could be running wild and free. But still, it's pretty understandable, since he wants to return to his herd and be reunited with his kin, and goes through hell and high water just to make it. And isn't that the ultimate journey in life? To patiently endure the world's hardships to make it home. It's as old as Homer's Odyssey and as funny as planes, trains, and automobiles. This film is, for all intents and purposes, is an ode to the Wild West. It presents a romanticized picture of how the West was before the white man came in and modernized everything. It was broad, majestic, innocent, and pure, a primeval paradise cut with plains, deserts, and woodlands. It's a reminder of what the world was like before things got complicated, like how the world seemed a lot simpler as a child and then it went all haywire as soon as you became a full-grown adult. We see the West from different perspectives. The animals aren't hindered by the terrain, but learn to live with it. The Lakota, meanwhile, do adapt to their surroundings, but they are encumbered by communal needs. While their presence is minimal, what with teepees and campfires, they tame nature to a degree, but still try to live by its rules rather than subvert it. However, with the settlers encroaching, their mission is entirely different. They aren't just there because they have to. They are bending nature to their will, constructing railroads, tunnels, forts, and towns, and forming the natural world to suit their needs rather than adapt like the Lakota. It's an interesting transition from seeing a primeval world and mod by progress to living a minimalist lifestyle to just outright turning otherwise inhospitable places into communities that thrive and support a growing population. It's an ode to what the West was and what it is becoming and what it will be in the future. Gotta say, I went into this movie not thinking much of it. Surely, it's just a kid's movie appealing to that generation who grew up in the early 2000s. But looking back, there's actually a lot to appreciate. It's a portrait of the people, animals, and landscape of the West in the late 19th century, showing us the simpler life before it got all complicated from the imposition of modern life. Furthermore, seeing this through the eyes of a Mustang who has no understanding of what's happening and no power to influence or change the course of progress, but is just there to witness it. In a weird way, it's kind of sad to see what happens, not only because we know what the end result is, but, through Spirit's eyes, we're seeing the last of what the West was, as it was for the past million years. Full disclosure, I'm not at all a hippie. But it's cool to see the world through the eyes of an animal that exemplifies freedom and ruggedness, encountering different types of people, and even having an effect on them, especially near the end when the Colonel finally salutes Spirit for his resilience. Mind you, that big jump at the end was a bit over the top, but when it's animation, all belief is suspended. Thanks for watching, and if you don't mind, please leave us a like, it helps a lot. And while you're at it, subscribe so you never miss an episode drop. This is the Robot signing off.